What if all of Antarctica's ice suddenly melted? The Earth's southernmost continent holds around 60% of the world's fresh water, locked away in massive ice sheets. What would happen if that ice, in the blink of an eye, were to melt away? How would this affect life on Earth, from the oceans to the atmosphere to the people living in coastal cities? Today, we're going to explore that mind-boggling scenario and its catastrophic consequences. Stay with us as we unravel the dramatic ripple effects that would shape our planet if Antarctica's ice were to disappear overnight. First, let's put this into perspective. Antarctica contains about 26 million cubic kilometers of ice. That's a staggering amount. If all of it were to melt, the sea levels around the world would rise by over 200 feet or 60 meters. This is no small rise. It would fundamentally reshape the entire planet. But how fast would this happen? Well, we're talking about an almost instantaneous process. In reality, it would take centuries for all of Antarctica's ice to melt due to current climate conditions. But let's suspend disbelief for a moment and imagine that this happened overnight. The first and most obvious consequence would be flooding. Coastal cities around the world, from New York to Bangkok, from London to Sydney, would be swallowed by the rising oceans. Major cities like Miami, Los Angeles, and Shanghai would be uninhabitable. These places where millions of people live and work would find themselves facing an unstoppable tide of water. Let's take a closer look at how this would affect some of the most populated regions on Earth. New York City's Lower Manhattan, which currently sits about 33 feet or 10 meters above sea level, would be completely submerged. Parts of Tokyo and Mumbai, both major coastal cities, would also be lost to the sea. In fact, it's estimated that almost 1 billion people live within 30 meters of sea level. All of them would face displacement, perhaps even extinction if this flooding occurred. The humanitarian crisis would be unimaginable. Refugees fleeing from submerged cities would have nowhere to go. With rising populations and limited resources, countries would be forced to handle the influx of climate refugees, which could trigger social and political upheaval. The global economy would collapse as the coastline of nearly every nation was altered beyond recognition, devastating shipping routes, infrastructure, and trade networks. Now let's consider the environmental impacts. The loss of all that ice in Antarctica would drastically affect global weather patterns. The ice sheets currently help regulate temperatures and ocean currents, but without them, we'd experience a massive disruption in the climate. Ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, which help keep Europe warm, would slow down, potentially sending the northern hemisphere into a new ice age or causing extreme weather events to become more frequent and intense. The melting of Antarctica's ice would also contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. As the ice recedes, the land beneath it, the Antarctic bedrock, would be exposed for the first time in millions of years. This land is believed to hold large quantities of methane, a potent greenhouse gas. The release of methane would dramatically increase the rate of global warming. Another devastating effect would be on our oceans. The influx of fresh water would dramatically dilute seawater, impacting marine life. Coral reefs, which rely on stable ocean temperatures, would face increased bleaching events. Fish stocks would decrease as marine ecosystems struggle to adapt. Additionally, the warmer waters would trigger the acidification of oceans, which would decimate shellfish and coral populations, disrupting marine food chains and global fisheries. But it's not just the oceans. The absence of ice would mean less reflective surface on Earth. Ice reflects sunlight, helping to regulate the planet's temperature. Without this reflective ice, more heat would be absorbed by the oceans and land masses, accelerating the rate of warming. On land, the consequences would be equally catastrophic. The sudden disappearance of Antarctica's ice would release massive amounts of water vapor into the atmosphere, which in turn would amplify the greenhouse effect. This would trigger intense heat waves and extreme droughts in regions that rely on a stable climate, such as Africa, Australia, and parts of the United States. Major agricultural regions would be devastated by changing precipitation patterns, further threatening food security. The ecosystems that depend on cold environments would be among the hardest hit. Species like polar bears and penguins, which depend on ice for breeding and hunting, would face extinction. Entire habitats would disappear, and millions of species, many of which we have yet to discover, would be at risk of disappearing forever. So, how can we prevent this? While we can't stop the ice from melting instantly, there are still steps we can take to slow down the process. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions, protecting critical ecosystems, and investing in renewable energy sources are just a few ways we can fight back against climate change. The fate of our planet may not be sealed yet, but it's clear that without action, the future could look grim. What if all of Antarctica's ice suddenly melted? It's a question that shows the fragile balance of our planet and the devastating consequences of neglecting our environment. The clock is ticking. The world's ice sheets are melting, and the time to act is now. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it insightful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content on the future of our planet. Stay informed, stay responsible, and together we can protect the Earth for generations to come.